And we are live. 25. Were you telling me, people? And we're back. This time we're gonna react to something a little bit different. So unless you've been living under a rock for the past week or so, you'll know that Kanye West went on the Drink Champs podcast with the rapper Noriega, DJ Effin. And he had some things to say, man. He had some interesting points to make about sort of the media, his own personal life, and his own personal experience around, kind of that billionaire lifestyle that he leads, and reaching the top upper echelons of certain industries, specifically the media industry and Hollywood, and the type of people that he's engaged with, and kind of his experiences in that world. And, he's got quite a lot of backlash, as you can expect, this day and age. Like, you say anything that people get their knickers in a twist about, they're gonna make it known on the net, right? So there's been a bit of backlash around what he's saying about the Jewish community specifically. Some people are gonna agree, some people are gonna disagree with his points, but I think he's done an interview now with Piers Morgan. Piers Morgan, the professional antagonist. Let's get into it. It's just a snippet of the interview. I heard the whole thing's like over an hour long. I'm not gonna put you through that, people. So we've just got a short excerpt from the interview. This was put on Sky News Australia, I believe. Piers Morgan, you had your pants pulled down last time out by Andrew Tate, so I'm expecting something a little bit better from you this time round. But let's see how you get on, man. And let's get into this shit.
From New York, now to my extraordinary exclusive interview with Ye, previously known, of course, as Kanye West, one of the most famous and influential artists in the world. He's been causing...
Why do you call him Kanye for? See, the title of this video is Kanye West accuses Piers Morgan of being a Karen. So already that title off the bat is painting Kanye West as the antagonist in this situation. But I'm sure he didn't ask or choose or volunteer to be on this platform. He's been pulled in. So why he's already being labelled as the antagonist when we all know Piers Morgan is the antagonist, professional antagonist at that, don't really make no sense to me. Kanye West accuses, so they're using a negative verb associated with Kanye of being a Karen. You are a Karen. You were a Karen on the Andrew Tate interview, so let's see if you can redeem yourself. But don't call him Kanye, man. His name's Kanye. Show some respect. It's got me tight off the bat, man. You know what I mean? All right, let's go.
And of course, as Kanye West, one of the most famous and influential artists in the world. He's been causing global outrage over the past 2 weeks with anti-Semitic tirades, which led to him being cancelled by social media platforms.
Anti-Semitic tirades. All right, so in case you don't know Piers Morgan's background, Piers Morgan is an ex-editor of every trash tabloid newspaper you can think of in the UK, from the Daily Mirror to the Sun to the News of the World, which has been defunct since his time on there because it was trash, basically. And not only that, he was caught up in the phone hacking scandal a few years back. So in the UK, there was a big media scandal around journalists that work for the Daily Mirror were hacking into celebrities' phones and getting the inside scoop, quite literally. And he was caught up in all of that, and he got a sack as a result of it. So let's not paint Piers Morgan up to be anyone who even has the audacity to put somebody else on a public platform and try and embarrass or scandalize anything that they've said, because this guy was quite literally at the forefront of one of the biggest scandals in UK media history. So the balls on this guy is basically what I'm trying to say. All right, so where were we, Piers? Anti-Semitic tirade. Let's go.
Past 2 weeks with anti-Semitic tirades, which led to him being cancelled by social media platforms. I wanted to give him the opportunity to set the record straight and explain if he meant what he said. Well, eventually, he apologised for what he said was hurtful comments about the Jewish people. But it took a while to get there. It was a fiery comment.
I know, I'm sorry to keep cutting in. The bit I didn't like about what Piers said there is he said hurtful comments about the Jewish people. So he's speaking third party. Piers Morgan isn't Jewish, by the way. Piers Morgan is Irish. So he's speaking from a third party perspective, but holding Kanye accountable for his views and what he expressed about Jewish people. So with that being said, Kanye West, who is widely considered not to be Jewish, had a third-party opinion on his personal experience with Jewish people, and he's now getting chastised for it. Pierre Morgan has basically done the same thing. So he's playing devil's advocate and expressing an opinion on Kanye West on behalf of a third party, which is the Jewish people. Since when did you become the mouthpiece for what's right and wrong? Anyway, let's get back into it.
For what he said was hurtful comments about the Jewish people. But it took a while to get there. It was a fiery conversation, passionate. It was funny at times. It was explosive. It's unmissable television. The full interview will air later this week. But here's the moment I think will get most people talking.
You don't hold accountability to my pain. You're being a Karen.
I'm talking about. I'm not a Karen
to the pain.
I'm not a Karen, and I'm not going to cancel you, and I'm not going to uncensor you. I'm simply going to challenge you on what you're saying.
You can't.
I think you don't understand the pain that you've been causing with some of these comments, and I think that one in particular, I can understand.
Oh my God! God forbid! God forbid! One comment could cause people to feel any of the pain that my people have went through for years. Even like the blacks being ushered to the left during the civil rights movement. No one has cared about black people.
All right.
No one is.
Let me say, I agree that the racism against black people has been utterly deplorable, shameful, unacceptable, and thank God the world is beginning to move to a better place about the way it is treated.
Okay. Nah, Piers. See, this is the problem, Piers. You, my friend, don't get to make that call. You don't get to make that judgment about whether things are getting better or whether things are getting worse for black people and the racism endured by black people across hundreds of years globally. You don't get to make that call. He just said that thankfully the world is moving in the right direction or improving in that regard or something along those lines. How do you get to, as a white Irishman, how do you get to make that call? And how do you validate or quantify that? Because by that logic, you're saying, all right, so let's take, for example, a black child walks down the street and they walk to school in 2021 and they get racially abused on their way to school 3 times, right? And then they do the same walk in 2022 and they only get racially abused 2 times. Is that what you're saying is improvement? That's regarded as an improvement in your eyes, right? That's how you can quantify it or validate it. But how does that affect the young person that in my scenario that we're talking about? There's no improvement for that person's life, right? So how do you sit there and say, things are getting better or things are moving in the right direction? And whilst we're on the point, if things are moving in the right direction, what are you doing? What are you doing to move the needle in that regard? Because right now, all I can see is you've got the wealthiest black man in America, because you didn't introduce him as that. Did you clock? You didn't introduce him with that level of accolade. So that's who we're talking about now. The richest black man in America, who, by the way, made his money through completely legal means and channels a positive narrative through his music and his other expressions of art. So there's no typical negative connotations around his rap music, right? So he's someone who's made it in that regard, a God-fearing man. Now, you're saying you're see, I'm going off on a tangent now. So he's the richest black man in America. You're putting him on a platform where I can see that the narrative you're trying to push, the narrative you're trying to drive is to embarrass this man and also maybe not have him cancelled, but hold him to account for the views that he said, i.e. to silence him or chastise his viewpoint to a certain degree. Now, if we're talking about an improvement to racism globally, let's not talk about billionaires. Let's not talk about millionaires. Let's talk about the average person, the average Joe walking down the street and how their lives are affected. Because all that little black boy or black girl is seeing now on the internet or on this video is the most successful black man in America is having his pants pulled down and being spanked and being held to account for his own personal viewpoint. So if that little boy or that little girl goes to school and they experience what from their personal viewpoint they deem as unjust or prejudice or racism toward them, having watched this, what are they going to think? Are they going to think, oh, I have the confidence and I feel empowered that I'm going to speak up about that and have my life improved and hold these people to account? Or are they going to feel, well, if the most successful black man in America can't say how his personal life or his personal views have been found to be unjust, then what chance do I have in life? So if we're talking about moving a needle in the right direction for racism, this is doing exactly the opposite, Piers. Because on the ground level, for layman's like you and I, or me, should I say, average people walking down the street, this isn't going to give them the confidence or the platform or the courage to speak up about things because this is what they're seeing. All right, sorry. That got me angry off the jump. We're going to get through this video, but you do not have the right, Piers Morgan, to make that call about black people. I'm sorry.
Shameful, unacceptable. And thank God the world is beginning to move to a better place about the way it has treated black people like you. However, one form of racism doesn't justify...
it's almost in a better place.
Well, one form of racism doesn't justify another.
It's not a better place.
I'm not cutting you off. I'm finishing my sentence so you can respond. One form of racism, it is racism when you say I'm going DEFCON for Jewish people.
I was in a position where I've been hurt, and this is the way I had the right to express myself. The point of this interview is for you to question me, and then for me to answer and say, okay, even though the same rules are not applied to my people, if a person with a gun or drugs is pulled over and has three other people in the car, they're all going to jail. I'm not going to apply that to Jewish people for the sake of this conversation. Isn't that what you wanted? But you know what you did? You tried to civil rights me. You tried to pull me back to a week ago, but we're here today. There's been plenty of conversations and commentary since that, but you want me to go back to 1960.
No.
You want me to go back to 7.
So Piers got in there late with the exclusive. That's what it is. So he's already done other interviews or spoke out on other platforms to sort of not necessarily double down, but pull back on some of his comments and explain what he's meant. And Piers, a week removed, has got in there and he's trying to jump back to what he said originally on Drink Champs. And by the way, we're all human. We can express ourselves in the moment, and Drink Champs is a platform where you're meant to get drunk and, you know, things might come out that you wouldn't ordinarily say, right or wrong. But you can backtrack. You can change your mind. We're human beings. That's what it's all about, you know? So yeah, Piers is salty because he didn't get the exclusive.
But you want me to go back to 1960.
No.
You want me to go back to 7 days ago.
All right, let me jump in. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to reflect.
Okay, so have we grown? Have we grown?
Here's how we grow. Yeah, here's how we grow. I want you to reflect.
No, have we grown? Have we grown? You're not in charge of my growth. You're not in charge of my growth, Chris.
Okay, let me phrase it like this. I'm about to suggest to you how you may grow if you choose to grow this way. And you can ignore me. You can ignore me.
Piers, how much money are you worth?
I was literally just about to say, the way Piers is talking with chest, it's like, it's just, it must be, it can only be a subconscious thing. But he's talking to Kanye like he is not talking to a billionaire, a multi-billionaire right now. And I don't like to speculate. I kind of only like to put things out where are factual. But, you know, energy don't lie. And if he was talking to a billionaire of any other ethnicity right now, or who wasn't wearing a hoodie and a baseball cap, I don't think he would have that bass in his voice. I could be wrong. Piers, I could be wrong. But I don't feel like you'd have that bass in your voice. Like you're talking to... Anyway, Kanye, you talk on it. You talk the thing, bro.
And you can ignore me. You can ignore me.
Piers, how much money are you worth?
Not as much as you, sadly.
Exactly. So take my advice. Maybe you'll get richer.
I would love to take your business advice.
Why would I listen to you?
Well, why don't you hear what my advice is and then work out if I'm wrong? Can we do that deal?
You ain't got the answers, Piers. Piers ain't got the answers right now, man.
Well, the thing is, you haven't given me any credit or a moment of reflection for the comparison that I made, the brilliant, if I do say so myself, comparison that I made to the cops pulling over one black person and locking
I
everyone
understand
up.
what you're
and my
saying.
tweet having issues. Wait a second, I wasn't done with the sentence. My tweet referring to all Jewish people, I said, for the sake of this conversation, I will refer to the business people who have destroyed me and my people and my fellow creatives. But you didn't even accept that I gave you that. You tried to push me back into 1960.
No, I
you
didn't.
tried to push me back into last week.
No, I didn't.
Okay,
I
do you
said-
accept?
Okay, so I haven't been following it bar for bar, word for word in terms of what's happened on social media since Drink Champs. But what it looks like is on Drink Champs, when Kanye was saying what he was saying, Nori kind of threw out the question to say, do you want to narrow it down? The people that you're talking about, the demographic that you're talking about, the cohort of, Jewish people that you're talking about, do you want to narrow that down to individuals or specifics? And at the time he said no. And what it sounds like has happened is since which time he's gone back and said, okay, we're talking about the business people that I've been dealing with in these industries. And, the way I see it is, it's like, do you want to narrow it down, or to get your point across, to start the conversation, do you need to start from a broader sense? And then as the conversation evolves, you get more granular. That's typically how anything works, right? But I think we can look at it from the flip side. So we're talking about a certain industry, like a media industry, or a performing arts, music, film, all of these industries. And at the top, when you reach certain levels of that, Kanye is saying that, the main protagonists that are running that industry are people of Jewish descent. They're Jewish, right? But if we turned around and said, okay, so media and Hollywood and film and music are the greatest inventions ever known to man, and the way that they've been sort of monetized and the industries that sit behind them are the greatest invention to man, then whoever invented those things, or whoever sits at the top of those things, if that is the claim that we're making, is going to stand up and claim that, right? They're going to say, yeah, that was us, that was me. So if we paint it in a positive light, you're going to claim it and say, yeah, this is us, or this is our people. We run this, and it's doing well for humanity, and it's doing positive things for the world. So at the same time, if you're going to take the good, you have to take the bad, right? It's yin and yang. Like, there's going to be good and bad in any situation. So where you're taking a positive, if based on whatever side of the coin you're on, whatever perspective you're on, if something is really good from somebody's perspective, that same thing that they're looking at through their eyes is going to be really bad, depending on where you sit in that equilibrium, right? I'll give you another example. It's like, if you look at the NBA and you want to make a critique about the NBA playing staff, should I say, you're going to look at that and say, that's a black contingent of people. If we talk about the NBA, we're talking about young black men, generally speaking. Yes, we're going to have our outliers. We're going to have our edge cases. We're going to have our Nikola Jokic and our Dirk Nowitzkis. But generally speaking, it's I don't know what the statistic is, but it's the high percentage black athletes, right? So if we say good things about the NBA, we're praising young black male athletes. If we say detrimental things about the NBA, playing staff, again, we're saying detrimental things about young black male athletes. And this has been going on for years in the sports world with the NBA. We don't have to look any further than Malice at the Palace with the Indiana Pacers, the Ron Artest situation, Jermaine O'Neal, them guys. Who incited that violence during that time? It wasn't necessarily the players that incited that, but what happened in the media and whose images were cast across all the tabloids and were made scapegoats for that whole situation. It was a black representation, a young black male representation, the same way that they done with Allen Iverson. Whenever there was a negative connotation around that, it was looked at as these are black, young black thugs, or so to speak, is how it was described during the time. So you got to look at the positive and you got to look at the negative. If you want to take plaudits and accolades for your success in a particular business area, you also got to take something different that comes with it. Another example I can give is, like, I watched a documentary not long ago about Hawaii, and Hawaii is a place that everyone looks at as like this haven. It's a beautiful tropical island. Everyone wants to go to Hawaii growing up as a kid, right? But on the and so it's looked at as a paradise by a lot of the world. But the people, the indigenous people to Hawaii, there's a flip side of that, because when you look behind the scenes and all of the pollution and litter that tourism creates on that island, it's destroying the island. The people, the local people, work for next to no money, and their island is now polluted to a point of no return. So we can look at that shining beacon of this oasis island that everyone dreams and aspires to go to. But for the local and indigenous people, the story is very different. So it's the same thing here, man. We just need to take the balance and say there's good and there's bad in everything. But highlighting the bad in something doesn't make you racist. It doesn't make you racist. Like, there are plenty things in the black community that I don't like. There are plenty of things in the white community that I don't like. It doesn't mean that I'm critiquing or saying negative things about the whole thing, but there are certain aspects that can't be all positive, and just calling them out by name can't be, we can't be silenced on that. We have to hold people to account to what they're actually saying and use our logic and dig a little deeper.
Accept that example that I gave you.
I understand completely the example you gave me. I think all racism is wrong.
So I feel that we've grown.
I would like you to reflect.
I feel that we've grown. Do you feel we've grown?
If you've now changed what you wanted to say originally, my question for you is, do you now regret saying DEFCON 3 on Jewish people? Are you sorry you said that?
No.
I don't think it matters. You should be.
Absolutely not. I will say I'm sorry for the people that I hurt with the DEFCON, the confusion that I call. I feel like I cause hurt and confusion. And I'm sorry for the families of the people that had nothing to do with the trauma that I had been through, and that I use my platform where you say hurt people, and I was hurt.
It's an uncensored interview. You said something which you've now wished you hadn't said, and you've apologized. I actually think that says a lot about you, right? That shows you've got that ability to be self-aware, to understand.
It's very patronizing, Piers. You've got that ability. Again, very patronizing.
When you cross a line, I think someone like you, with all your energy and creativity and your passion, you're going to say stuff. The way that you talk constantly and in such an extraordinary manner, you're going to trip up. You're going to say things the wrong way. I don't think there's anything wrong in, when you do that, doing what you just did and saying, look, I'm sorry, I crossed a line, I apologize.
I want to say that it's wrong to hold an apology hostage, and I got to let go of that and free myself of the trauma and say, look, I'm just going to give it all up to God right now. And say to those families that I hurt, I really want to give you guys a big hug. And I want to, I say, I'm sorry for hurting you with my comments. And I want to word it in not in like a political way, but in a presidential way, which means what I knew a president to be when I was growing up.
So that was Ye, formerly Kanye West. It's an extraordinary interview. We're going to actually air almost the entire thing at the end of the week, so people can see everything.
Wait, so that's the only bit that that he's showing on this particular broadcast? Let's run it and see if there's any more.
In real context. But very obviously, throughout the course of the interview, he began, I think, to understand the impact of his words, which had caused such offence, and finally got to a place where he apologised to people who'd been offended, particularly Jewish people. Well, joining me now is Fox News contributor Tyrus, along with KISS frontman Gene Simmons. Let me start with you, Tyrus. We just had to quickly get that series of clips together to try and say some of the context of what.
So here's something interesting, right? I think it's important to understand who was offended by his comments, because there's this thing in the media, and this is kind of going back to his original point around how the media can be controlled and the narrative can be kind of skewed in a particular direction. Because who actually is or was offended? Because the only voice piece we have right now in this kind of global context is Piers Morgan, who's not Jewish. So wouldn't it be more integral to hear the viewpoint from a range of Jewish contributors? And I mean, so if that sentiment does exist, that it's offensive and it's anti-Semitic and or racist, I'm not sure what the actual claims and by which parties have been made. I'd like to kind of hear what those are from the proverbial horse's mouth rather than Piers Morgan, because it's easy to repeat a narrative, and when you look behind it, it doesn't actually have substance. Like if you go into the communities and say, hey, was this anti-Semitic, was this racist, was this offensive, and the people that reside in those communities might be like, you know, in the scheme of things or in the context that it was given, no, it's not. But then the narrative becomes, especially on these sort of global platforms, that it was racist. So we have to be careful and mindful of that. So, and I mean, like, because there's also this thing, right? So if it's racist towards Jewish people and it's most offensive to Jewish people, is that because Kanye West is black and he's speaking about a different community, or is that because Kanye West is non-Jewish? Although during the original interview, he sort of claimed to be Semite based on origin. You know, he's Christian, but from a ethnicity background, you know, he has claims to being Semitic and being of the people from where those languages and those cultures, you know, have heritage, like Ethiopia and like other parts of Africa where Semitic languages, you know, there's evidence to show they originate from. So, and he was quite clear and I think quite intelligent and quite responsible in you know, trying to align himself with other people and not making it divisive and about us and them. Like, he, you know, I am a son of Abraham in my origin. So we can have that conversation as brothers, and brothers was another word that he used during that. So I think what Piers was saying, you can, in hindsight, look back at the language and the choice of words you use, and you can clarify that in subsequent communications without being shot down. And we also have to take into account, this is a man, Kanye West, who's made his career, his name, his fortune stemming from being a music producer, but also a rapper. And a rapper by nature communicates in a way that's exaggerative and uses metaphor and needs to collate a number of ideas into a compressed format in order to communicate to millions of people, you know, and that's what a rapper does innately. So, and sometimes it can be sensationalized, and it can be metaphorical, and it can be disproportionate, but to communicate that message, that's what you do. So let's not act like this is someone who, you know, hasn't made a career or hasn't been known to do that. So we just kind of have to take it into context and take it in perspective who we're talking about. And you know, you can listen to Kanye's music. He says quite clearly in loads of his music kind of that's what he does. And you know, don't hold me to account on a granular level with what I'm saying, but you get the sentiment and you get the narrative, and ultimately it's unboxed a conversation, it's opened a conversation. And I think it's a conversation where ultimately what he's trying to do is empower and improve and better the economic journey of black people in America, and the trickle down effect will be around the world. And that can only be a positive thing, certainly in my eyes, and I think it should be a positive thing in other people's eyes. So yeah, that's kind of where my thoughts sit on it. You know, if you listen to "Can't Tell Me Nothing," one of Kanye's kind of biggest hits, in the first verse he says just that. I can't quote the bars bar for bar. I might go back and listen to that song now, but he says something to that effect. You know, don't kind of hold me to account to what I say, but just kind of hear the energy and what I'm trying to get to, and you kind of interpret that in your own way. But I'm a man of God, and I'm trying to spread positivity. So yeah, I mean, who is this guy?
What happened? Because to start with, he was resolute. I'm not going to apologise, and then went on a sort of long clarification if he was talking about
WWE
business people
wrestler
who
or
had,
something.
in his view, had let him down and so on. But there's no doubt the
think I've seen
original
this guy in
comment
WWE.
that he made, that he
Look at the
tweeted,
tongues, the
which was
chains,
deplatformed from
tongue.
social media, it was talking about the Jewish people in generality and therefore very offensive.
Well, first of all, I don't even know if I would call that an interview. That was you sat him down under the tree of wisdom.
Why is this guy speaking? Is he Jewish? What is his contribution? What is the wrestler's contribution to this conversation? I don't mean to disrespect the guy. I'm just trying to figure it out. Yeah, we might come back to this bit in another video. He's talking about Drink Champs right now. The thing for me, I'm going to end it on this, right? What I want to know is, why did Nori, who was the host of the Drink Champs podcast, why did he apologize? So he found it suitable to have the conversation. Bearing in mind, this was the third time that Kanye West has been on his platform. So he knows what type of content he's going to get. He knows it's going to be good for business. It's going to get a lot of traction in the social media world. It's going to go viral. So he knows it. So it's good for business. So he was quite comfortable in inviting Kanye on. And was quite comfortable with the direction of the conversation to the point where I'm going to publish this interview. A day later, seeing public backlash online, whether that was curated or whether that was genuine organic backlash, all of a sudden he comes out and apologizes. Now, if what Kanye West is saying is not true, i.e. the media is not controlled by, a set of people who have certain aims and ambitions for a certain community, right? If that's not true, why did Nori publish the interview and then 24 hours later come out and publicly apologize when Nori himself wasn't the one that expressed any of these views? And to the point, at the beginning of Drink Champs, there's a disclaimer that says any of the views put out on this podcast aren't the views of Drink Champs. They're of the third party, i.e. the guest being interviewed, right? So you've kind of got that legal disclaimer going on to cover your back there. So why is he apologizing? To me, it can only be that someone or something has leaned on him to make him apologize. That's the only thing that makes sense, right? Why else would you apologize if you found it that that risque? You wouldn't have published it in the first place. So that's kind of the point. That kind of, I don't know, in a way validates what Kanye was saying in the first place, does it not? Because, all right, let's look at another example. I touched on it at the start of the podcast, at the start of the reaction. Piers Morgan interviewed Andrew Tate a couple of weeks ago, right? Now, Piers Morgan, by his own admission, has claimed that Andrew Tate is misogynist and sees that as a negative thing and wants that type of behavior and that type of narrative to be cold, right? And so he held him to account. So if misogyny, as said by Piers Morgan, is so offensive and Andrew Tate is displaying that, why did Piers Morgan not come out and apologize for having Andrew Tate and his opinion on his show? Because is that not the same thing as Nori apologizing for Kanye West's views on his show? And the only difference I can see there is either Noriega feels like he's got a lot more to lose than Piers Morgan. Piers Morgan by nature is a lot less apologetic, or Piers Morgan has the license by quote unquote the powers that be to host these opinions and say these things and has the power and influence to do that without being leaned on, and Noriega doesn't. That's the only, I'm just applying logic. Again, I don't know any facts behind any of these situations. I really don't know, but I'm just looking at two situations that are quite parallel and drawing my own conclusions. Anyway, enough of that. Thanks for watching the video. Like, comment, subscribe, and we out. Live 25.